So I pass the floor to Greg. We started with Chautauqua, then the power of the words of women, and now rhythm. What blues can teach us and sharings about connections of Bildung and the blues. Please, Greg, the floor is with you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate Lynette um, inviting me, and it's really good to see everyone, including the last speaker, who I didn't realize until I recognized her when she came on screen. That I do recognize you, by the way. So really good to see you, Dan, and everyone else. So let me go right in, and I'll take these off so you won't see the glare of the lights. So the blues. The blues is a wisdom tradition deriving from the Black American people in North America. And it has many dimensions: musical, poetic, literary, and it's an attitude and way of life and worldview. My mentor, Albert Murray, you can see here, I won't have any slides, but I will show you a couple of books. He actually coined the expression blues idiom to capture the fullness of the blues. So I'm going to explore these dimensions and connect the blues idiom directly to Bildung in the latter part of my brief remarks. So as a musical form, the blues scale is very similar to the pentatonic scale, which is practically universal in human cultures. So the blues idiom and the blues as a form connects to musical culture across the planet. But here in the United States, the blues is the roots music of many of the nation's styles, from gospel and jazz to country and Western and R&B to rock and roll. In this year's Grammy Awards, which will be broadcast in 2 weeks, the person who received the most nominations, Jonathan Batiste, he's a blues and jazz musician. And his song for Record of the Year, and he got 11 nominations, the most of anyone, but the song for Record of the Year is called Freedom, and that's a blues. And it's not happenstance, the title of that song, Freedom, which is fundamental not only to Black American life and history, but to American democracy itself. The blues is also poetry. The great American writer and democratic theorist Ralph Ellison once said that as a form, the blues is an autobiographical chronicle of personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. But the sentence right before then is more poetic and literary and is a classic description of the blues. The blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive in one's aching consciousness, to finger its jagged grain, and to transcend it, not by the consolation of philosophy, but by squeezing from it a near tragic, near comic lyricism. Now, the musical aspect of the blues also plays a vital social function. In Albert Murray's work, Stompin' the Blues, he describes this dimension of the culture of American Negroes in a ritual domain, as the Saturday night function and the Sunday morning church service. And that's two sides of the blues idiom coin, sacred and secular. Let me just take this out. On Sunday mornings, rituals of devotion and propitiation were prominent, as well as making a joyful noise unto the Lord. On Saturday nights, on the other side of the tradition, you engage in purification rituals to banish all the mess and cruelty of life, and in fertility rituals. So you play the blues to get rid of the blues by facing your troubles forthrightly, admitting that life can be unfair and random. But even still, you dance, have a good time, and get it on, letting the good times roll, to stomp the blues just temporarily. Why? because in the blues tradition, you know that the metaphorical Blue Devils will likely be back tomorrow. Now, the blues is also an attitude and orientation to life itself. It's a worldview, in fact. The orientation understands that tragedy, suffering, and even injustice are givens in life, yet creates beauty in form and meaning to affirm the sheer fact of life and existence itself. And in the book, Conversations with Albert Murray, right here, so you can see a picture of him, he has a quote that talks about the blues idiom as an attitude, okay? So he was asked, what is the blues idiom? And here's what he said. He said, the blues idiom is an attitude of affirmation in the face of difficulty, of improvisation in the face of challenge. It means that you acknowledge that life is a low down, dirty shame, yet confront that fact with perseverance, with humor, and above all, with elegance. And on page 144 of the Nordic Secret, Lena speaks of two of the Germans who helped to extend, elaborate, and refine Bildung, Schiller and Goethe. Quote, if we talk about scaffolding personal development, Schiller and Goethe are examples of two geniuses who became each other's ladder and scaffolding as they climbed, each in their own way. And this is the truth and very similar in the dynamic, comparing, second here, I'm sorry. Right. The same can be said of Albert Murray and Ralph Ellison, okay? Why? Because they both attended the historically Black college Tuskegee Institute in Alabama in the 1930s. Ironically, they became two of the most important literary and cultural minds that America produced in the 20th century, but attended a college founded by Booker T. Washington, who advocated for the horizontal development of trade and industrial skills. The great intellectual and co-founder of the NAACP, W.E.B. Du Bois, was a product of another institute of higher learning for Negro Americans built in the aftermath of the Civil War, Fisk University, after which he attended and graduated from Harvard and attended graduate school at the University of Berlin. Du Bois was more in favor of the vertical development provided by liberal arts education. Historically Black colleges were a manifestation of the intense and life-giving hunger for education of formerly enslaved persons, so they could develop from being illiterate peasants to educated contributors to American society. Though many, many obstacles were put in our way, slowly but surely we began to rise. For example, the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, and among many other examples, the debate team from Wiley College, a historically Black college and university, that defeated the national champions at USC in 1935. There's a movie from 2007 starring Denzel Washington called The Great Debaters that chronicles this. Then you have Howard University in Washington, D.C. And Howard University's law school had a great mind, Charles Hamilton Houston, who devised the strategy, the legal strategy to end legalized racial segregation. Thurgood Marshall, who argued and won the Brown v. Board decision at the Supreme Court in 1954 and became a justice of the Supreme Court himself, was a student of Charles Hamilton Houston's. Those examples of educational excellence for social change and advancement, moving the US closer to the promises in the social contract in its founding documents, laid the ground for Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is likely to become the first Black American woman to serve on the Supreme Court. She's actually testifying right now. So, if we define Bildung as the combination of the education and knowledge necessary to thrive in your society and the moral and emotional maturity to both be a team player and have personal autonomy, and also knowing your roots and being able to imagine the future, then undoubtedly the blues idiom fits. For Black Americans imagined a better future and worked to create a culture both rooted and cosmopolitan. And as CEO of the Jazz Leadership Project, I can assure you that jazz music epitomizes in principle and practice the emotional and moral maturity to exercise both personal agency and autonomy while being a member of a team and ensemble. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
I just wanted to say one additional
Please.
thing, because I really wanted to stay within the time frame given, but there are some direct connections between some of the originators of the very idea and concept of Bildung and folks in the Black American intellectual tradition. I'll just give, there's two quick examples. There are many. One example is the great American cultural historian, Constance Rourke. She was influenced by Herder, and Albert Murray considered Constance Rourke a patron saint of his, okay? He loved her work. Then you have an influence on Murray of Thomas Mann, who was profoundly influenced by Goethe. And Murray used literature and the blues and connected them in a way where he used the foundation of the blues and jazz in his literature in the same way that Thomas Mann used classical music in the Magic Mountain. He was influenced to use that approach to music and expand out from it through Mann's example. So I just wanted to give those two brief examples.
Thank you. And Dana is asking, who is Constance Rourke? I believe this is the correct spelling. Could you
Yes.
just answer, please?
Oh, absolutely. Constance Rourke, great American cultural historian from the 1920s and 30s to the 40s. The Roots of American Culture is one of her books. And I think her most famous book is American Humor, which refers not only to a comedy tradition, but to humor as character, like American character. And she famously said that the American culture itself was composed of three types. You have the frontiersmen and like Native Americans. You have the Yankee, the New England Yankee, and you have the American Negro, and that those types were fundamental to American culture, and that they created emblems for pioneer people who required resilience as a prime trait. That's the very statement that had Murray fall in love with Constance Rourke.